From Ninja Gaiden's earliest 2D entries to Ryu's critically acclaimed foray into 3D, the Ninja Gaiden series has hacked and slashed its way to the top of the hyper-violent, also known as fun, action games genre. While countless Ninja games have been released since the NES original, what is it that makes the Ninja Gaiden series still relevant after nearly 40 years? In this episode of IGN Rewind, we're going to take a look back at how this series found its core game design DNA thanks to an early use of cinematics, narrative-driven gameplay, and innovation in difficult but rewarding challenges. Not to mention, one of the sickest finishers ever in a video game. This is the story about how Ninja Gaiden has kept its blade sharp and remains one of the most influential action series of all time. The year is 1988. Arcades are a dominant force in games thanks to titles like Double Dragon, Ghouls and Ghosts, and Contra. All excellent games in their own right, but little did the world know that one of the most important Ninja games of all time was about to be released in both arcades and on the NES.
Out of the darkness, the bright spirit of the Gaiden reborn. Ninja Gaiden from Tecmo. Just when you had given up all hope, a ninja saves you from the evil Jackie O. More realistic than any other TV game, you're right in the action, fighting to the death.
Ninja Gaiden, the game we in the Western world know as Ninja Gaiden because, well, according to the game's art director, this is a direct quote, it sounded cool. The arcade saw a Double Dragon-inspired port, which, while popular at the time, was dramatically different from the console version of Ninja Gaiden that we would all come to know and love. Ninja Gaiden was an unexpected revolution in action games, and overnight it had redefined what video games were capable of, thanks to its difficult but extremely rewarding combat, narrative-driven gameplay, and one of gaming's first uses of cinematic cutscenes to tell a story. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find a major release without some sort of cutscene or narrative break, with some games even feeling like they're more movie than game. In the early days though, this wasn't the case. The majority of video games on the NES use a single static image with text and music to bookend a game's story using what most would loosely call a cutscene. Games like Castlevania or The Legend of Zelda that demanded more explanation would require you to open up the manual and find it yourself rather than play the game. Yes, hardware was a limitation, but it wasn't the only one. Western and Japanese versions of some NES games varied dramatically in narrative, tone, and marketing because at the time, video games were still considered to be primarily for kids.
Unseen, unheard, and unnoticed. Mission accomplished. The final battle begins. Ninja Gaiden for Nintendo from Tecmo.
Ninja Gaiden desperately wanted to change that. The developers Team Ninja used a Hollywood blockbuster-like approach to elevate its storytelling for mature audiences. The game starts with a cutscene of two ninjas dueling to the death in a grassy, moonlit field. Like a big-budget movie, it utilized fast cuts, cinematic camera work, a widescreen aspect ratio, and expressive music to set up the death of Ryu's father. This inciting incident leads you on a game-long quest for revenge. Revenge wasn't new to video games, but that kind of cinematic setup sure was. In just a few seconds, we went from video games with little to no storytelling to anime-inspired cutscenes and dialogue motivating the player to complete their journey. This level of storytelling marked a major step forward for the perception of video games, proving they could be so much more than a child's toy. Video games could also be an engaging platform to tell a captivating story. Cutscenes, however, aren't the only thing that made Ninja Gaiden stand out all those years ago. Gaiden's game design also made significant strides, proving to be uniquely challenging to gamers of the 8-bit generation. Instead of having the time jumps and memorize level layouts like in early Mega Man and Mario games, Gaiden's high difficulty, high reward gameplay tied progression to skill development and a player's ability to master the game's mechanics. Most hard games were designed to be this way because it was an easy way to pad out the game's runtime, or in the case of the arcade, make sure our pockets were noticeably lighter when we left. Ninja Gaiden was one of the first games to take a high challenge, high reward gameplay and mold it into something more enjoyable. You're gonna die a lot when you play these games, but after enough frustrating failure, you'll eventually find yourself playing the game with a mix of defensive dodging and aggressive strike, and okay, brace yourself for this one, having a lot of fun. Stage 1-1 is a masterclass in this philosophy, teaching players that challenge can be rewarding. The first stage in most games typically acts as a tutorial. Super Mario Bros. Teaches players how to jump with little difficulty, Metroid forces the player to backtrack in order to gain the Morph Ball ability, and Sonic quickly demonstrates the need for speed, because, you gotta go fast. By immediately thrusting you into combat, Ninja Gaiden's first level not only explains the game's core mechanics of kill or be killed, but also demonstrates that enemies can come from all directions, even behind you. We've all been killed too many times by those annoying dogs within a few seconds of starting. The game's tutorial level is a trial by fire that teaches you both strike first and strike fast, and how to navigate the game's levels. Those skills are continually reinforced throughout the game, requiring a lot more trial and error as it gets progressively harder. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? While the first true Souls-like game wouldn't be released for another 20+ years, it's not hard to see Gaiden's DNA in Demon's Souls, Bloodborne, and every other Soulsborne game since. This challenging and at times frustrating game design not only solidified Ninja Gaiden's NES adventure as one of the 8-bit era's best games, but also helped shape the next generation of Ryu's adventures on the Game Boy, Sega's Master System, and a decade later, the original Xbox. The 6th generation of video games had some of the most influential games of all time. Games like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Resident Evil 4, Halo, Combat Evolved, Kingdom Hearts, Metal Gear Solid 3, the list just goes on and on. So it would take a forward-thinking and not to mention generation-defying entry in the Ninja Gaiden series to even cut its own place in what many consider one of the best generations of gaming. For Ninja Gaiden, there weren't one, but 3 titles that kept the series sharp in a time where competition was fierce and groundbreaking innovation was everywhere. 2004's Ninja Gaiden, and more specifically its expanded 2005 re-release, Ninja Gaiden Black, is considered one of the greatest action games of not only the 6th generation, but to some of all time. IGN gave it an incredibly high score of 9.4, praising its fast-paced combat, its hard but rewarding gameplay, and action. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Similarly to the original, this new take on the series would need to once again redefine the standards of what an action game can be. While the cutscenes look great for the time, it's Ninja Gaiden's gameplay that would once again shine and raise the bar for challenging action games across the board, while still emphasizing the strike hard and strike fast precision and timing from the NES era games. Combat was more chaotic and aggressive now that Ryu was able to be attacked in 3 dimensions, and pairing incoming attacks relied heavily on timing and rhythm. You can't just button mash your way through enemies. It requires a more methodical approach with each encounter, honed by a lot of death. Just like in the first game, you're taught this right off the bat, as you find yourself fighting 2 very annoying ninjas on a cliffside. I died a few times here. Choosing when to attack, when to dodge, and when to avoid enemies ends up becoming a metagame of rock, paper, scissors, and it's something we've seen in countless games since, like in the Batman Arkham series, and practically every Souls game ever. For some players, myself included, Ninja Gaiden Black was one of the first games where, even though the gameplay could get extremely frustrating at times, and it did, it was pretty hard to put down once the game's core mechanics were figured out. For me, it wasn't until I beat the first boss, timing my strikes and dodges by finding the right balance between patience and aggression, that I understood how rewarding the game could be. By the time the game's final boss comes stomping around, the game delivers a final fight that, when played how you've been trained up until then, feels cinematic in its own right. Instead of cheesing the boss and spamming X a million times until their health bar hits 0, the player will find themselves dodging and parrying in ways that they couldn't early on in the game, making the fight feel almost like a narrative device in its own right. You as the player grow alongside Ryu as his journey progresses. This is a concept that's found in pretty much every high difficulty, high reward game to this day. And if you really take a step back and think about it, by forcing the player to get good, or at least achieve some semblance of a flow state by combining parries, dodges, and attacks with razor precision, the combat also becomes a narrative device that helps you progress the story. You grow alongside Ryu, you get stronger alongside Ryu, and most importantly, by the end you fight like a master ninja, just like the first game did way back in 1988. While not as impactful as the 2004 release, Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3 went on to receive critical acclaim and multiple releases and revisions. These games improved on what made the original Xbox title so meaningful, pushing Gaiden's precise combat and difficulty into the next console generation. Unfortunately, the franchise didn't cut through the competition in quite the same way Ninja Gaiden Black did at the height of the 6th console generation. It wasn't until over a decade after Ninja Gaiden 3 that indie developer The Game Kitchen would revitalize the series with Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. What's old is new again. Ragebound took the series back to its 2D roots, adding more to the lore of Ninja Gaiden and perfecting the series' difficult but fair gameplay for a new generation of side-scrollers. It went on to be considered one of the best entries in the series according to the IGN audience, and I concur. What's more, it helped pave the way for the latest installment, Ninja Gaiden 4, which looks set to raise the bar again for a new generation of hyper-violent and tough action games. It's impossible to overstate the impact Ninja Gaiden has had on action games over the years. Its DNA can be found in hundreds of great games due to its excellent combat mechanics, crushing difficulty, which somehow manages to be fun, and early use of cinematics to tell a story in new ways. Simply put, action games as they are today simply wouldn't exist without the influence of Ninja Gaiden.